the President of Korea addressed the nation. He greeted all the citizens. Before starting his speech, he made a request. He asked everyone to make sure that the people around them were watching TV. He repeated his request. In homes, families sat together in front of their televisions, watching quietly. Some people shouted to others, telling them to turn on their TVs. The message was passed around. The president again asked everyone to turn on their televisions so that as many citizens as possible could watch the broadcast. The president continued his address. He said that he was hearing reports that the viewership ratings were rising sharply, even though not even a minute had passed since the broadcast began. He thanked the citizens sincerely for their understanding, saying that they must have been deeply troubled by the unexplained restrictions. He then announced that martial law had been declared at exactly 5 p.m. on July 16th. He explained that the military had taken control of media outlets and key infrastructure, and that major roads had been closed. And the reason he went this far was because he wanted to face the apocalypse in an orderly way. He added that everyone already knew this by now, that the scenario from a game called Survival Life was happening in reality. He then mentioned the asteroid from that game called Onjambi. It was heading straight toward Earth, and according to news received at dawn, the US military failed to shoot down Onjambi. As a result, the asteroid eventually fell near Okinawa. The impact caused a massive explosion. It was later confirmed that the damage was catastrophic, and sadly the Japanese people were currently turning into zombies. He explained that the zombie spores released from Onjambi were spreading rapidly and that those spores would reach their country at 1 p.m. today. Addressing the nation again, he said that the zombie outbreak could not be avoided. However, according to their findings, it appeared that a small number of people, including awakened individuals, might be able to avoid zombification. So for those people he had prepared something. Although it would not open for a year to ensure safety, time shelters had been installed at the marked locations and everyone should head there. He then said that there was also a strategy guide for the monsters that would appear early on. He added that all of this information would be distributed again through leaflets dropped from airplanes. After that, he announced that all thermal power plants would soon be shut down. Finally, he said that he was a person with many shortcomings, but he believed he had done what needed to be done in this final moment. The president ended his speech. He said that it had been an honor to serve his fellow citizens. He bowed deeply and told everyone to survive and meet again someday. He added one last thing, thanking the anonymous informant who had given them the exact day of the disaster. The broadcast ended, and the screen went silent. Elsewhere, a man held the remote and let out a sigh. He thought that he truly hoped the apocalypse would not come, but since it was already here, he accepted that he had to survive. As someone who had already experienced the apocalypse once, he prepared himself. He picked up his weapon and moved forward with a calm smile. He was our protagonist. A few months before the apocalypse began, a very difficult game called Survival Life was released. It was a VR apocalypse game, also known as Asura. The game was known for its extreme difficulty. Even hardcore Korean gamers found it overwhelming. Because of that, the game shot to the top of the charts right after its release. But despite its early fame, the game ended up with only 4 players left after a year. The game's popularity fell just as quickly as it had risen. However, the game was so difficult that one by one his friends also quit, and he was the only remaining player in Asura. He hoped they would join his stream, but he could not bring himself to let go. As time passed, the other veteran players logged in less and less, and in the end, he was left alone. But even then, he kept recording update videos so he could still enjoy the game with them. He streamed day and night, waiting for them to return. Several months passed quickly after that. During that time, the tutorial difficulty was greatly lowered, and the early stages of the game were improved. As time went on, new enemies appeared in the game. Along with the zombies and fantasy monsters, grotesque mutated creatures began to show up. He welcomed the massive update at first. However, his friends slowly lost interest and stopped logging in altogether. In the end, the game named Asura was left with only one concurrent player. And finally, the day came when he became so frustrated that he decided this time he would quit for real. But just then, a system message appeared in front of him. The Survival Life operations team announced that before making their announcement, they wanted to thank all the users who had loved the game. They stated that in 1 week, Survival Life service would be permanently terminated. They said they felt deep regret, but hoped they might meet again someday. Hearing this, he was stunned and wondered if they had been waiting for him to finally give up. Looking at the ruined city and the monsters around him, he quietly said that before quitting, he wanted to defeat that one monster together with his friends. A heavy feeling of despair washed over him. He stopped the recording and slowly took off his gear. After that he deleted his streaming account and the MeTube channel where he had streamed Sura for 5,500 hours. However, he could not bring himself to throw away the hard drive filled with memories, so he pushed it into a storage closet. Kimbap Joa, no, Kang Sung-ho closed that chapter of his life. From that moment on, he truly began living his real life. Just like that, 3 months passed, and Kang Sung-ho was living a proper life. The reason his ID was called Kimbap Joa was simple. He had been running a snack shop for 3 years. The snack shop was on the first floor of the house he inherited after losing his parents during his second year of high school. The second floor was where he lived. A framed photo of his parents rested quietly inside the house. Outside, the sign read Sung-ho's Tasty Snacks, and customers gathered in front of the shop. Kang Sung-ho stepped forward with a tray and started to say that the food was ready, but someone loudly called out his name. He smiled and handed over the food. A young woman walked closer and laughed, saying business seemed really good today. She was Mei Kyung. She was a local hairdresser and a regular customer, though he had never asked for her last name. It was no secret that she was pretty. Mei Kyung leaned in and asked if he had seen something interesting. She lightly tapped him and showed him her phone. Sung-ho looked confused and asked what she meant. Mi Kyung said she had heard from some kids earlier that this topic was trending in online communities. She showed him a post on her phone explaining that people were saying a status window could really appear if someone shouted it out loud. She added that many comments were arguing about it, with some people saying it worked and others calling it nonsense. Sung-ho looked at the screen and responded calmly, saying he understood. Mi Kyung then said she had already tried it herself, but sadly nothing showed up for her. Hearing that, Sung-ho laughed lightly. He told Mi Kyung that there was no way something like that would actually appear. With a smile, he asked if she was being a little too gullible. Sometime later, after Sung-ho closed his shop and went home, he remembered what Mi Kyung had told him. He didn't want to believe it, but the thought tempted him to give it a try. So he raised his hand and shouted, calling for a status window. But unfortunately, nothing happened at first. He turned away, already convinced it was nonsense. At that moment, a strange blue light flickered in the air. A sharp sound rang out as something appeared in front of him. Sung-ho froze in place, his eyes widening. A glowing screen floated before his face. He stared at it in shock and shouted in disbelief, asking if it had really shown up. The glowing status window hovered in front of Sung-ho. It showed his basic information, including his health, strength, agility, dexterity, and perception. There were no points, skills, or effects listed yet. One line caught his attention, a trait called Open Private Portal. As he stared at the screen, he felt a strange sense of familiarity. He thought he had seen something like this before. Suddenly, an image flashed in his mind. His eyes widened as he realized it looked similar to Survival Life, but the thought did not fully fit. He quickly denied it, remembering that Sura never had a trait system. His gaze returned to the trait section, focusing on the words Open Private Portal. He clicked on it, and another window appeared, explaining that the portal could only be used by the trait holder and that the command was Open Portal. Sung-ho rubbed his chin and looked thoughtful. After reading it carefully, he muttered that the command itself felt a bit lame. Sung-ho raised his hand and spoke the command, telling the portal to open. Blue light gathered under his palm and began to spin. The air twisted as streams of light swirled together, forming a bright circle. In the next moment, the light expanded and turned into a large glowing gate. The portal stood tall in front of him, shining with a deep blue color. Sung-ho stared at it in awe and quietly said it was amazing. As he looked closer, a familiar feeling struck him. He realized the portal looked exactly like the labyrinth gate from Sura. His heart started pounding. He grabbed his head in shock and asked himself if this was really the Survival Life system. Fear and disbelief filled his face. He quickly denied it, whispering that it could not be real. Sung-ho quickly grabbed his phone and told himself that if this were real, there would definitely be an article about Yoonjambi. He searched nervously, his eyes fixed on the screen. Just then, a news article appeared, talking about an asteroid called Yoonjambi being monitored by NASA. It said the chance of it approaching Earth was close to 0. His face went pale. He muttered in shock that there really was one. Panic rushed through him. He shook his head again and again, refusing to accept it. Holding his head with one hand, he tried to calm himself and said the name could just be a coincidence. He told himself it was too early to jump to conclusions. But as he stared at the article on his phone, doubt crept back in. In a low voice, he wondered what if it was real after all. Shongho stood beside the glowing portal and stared at it quietly. He said that if this was really happening, there might be some kind of proof inside. Slowly, he reached his hand toward the portal. Just before touching it, he suddenly stopped. He hesitated, his fingers trembling slightly. A thought crossed his mind. Going in without any plan might be too dangerous. Shongho pulled his hand back and looked serious, realizing he needed to think carefully before stepping inside, so he decided to test it first. He picked up a ladle and slowly pushed it inside, trying to feel what was on the other side. After a moment he pulled it back. There was dirt on the ladle. Seeing that, Shongho relaxed a little. He said that if it was just dirt, then the other side was not a labyrinth at least. He thought carefully and said this portal might simply be something like a warp. He wondered if it was teleporting him to somewhere else on Earth. He packed a small bag and looked at the portal again. He said that since he had done a very basic safety check and some preparation, it was time to decide. Standing in front of the glowing blue gate, he wondered if he should go inside. After a moment he stepped through. In the next instant, his eyes widened. He gasped softly in shock. When he looked around, he found himself in a completely different place. Green trees surrounded him, sunlight filtered through the leaves, and the air felt fresh. The portal stood behind him, glowing quietly. He stared at the scene in disbelief and wondered if this was really happening. After checking his phone, he noticed there was no signal at all. Because of that, he assumed this place was at least a remote area that people rarely reached. For now, there was no way to confirm where he actually was. He decided that the most important thing was to find proof, so he planned to explore the area and leave markers behind. He took out a pen-like tool and made marks on a tree as a sign. After that, he sighed in frustration. Then he continued walking down the forest path, moving deeper into the area. He wiped sweat from his face and complained that this was exhausting. He wondered why the forest was so big and endless. Feeling tired and irritated, he wished that something would finally appear. Just then, he sensed something behind him. Before he could react, a sharp red beam shot out. He screamed in shock as his body was thrown backward. When he looked up, he froze. A strange white deer stood in front of him, its antlers wide and unnatural. A blue window appeared in the air, showing the name Valley Deer. Seeing the name and the system window, his heart sank. He realized that this place might not be Earth at all, and it scared him for a moment. However, after observing it carefully, he realized it did not seem to be an aggressive animal. Calming himself, he thought that anyway, he still could not say he had found any proof of an apocalypse yet. He felt that it would be a different story if dangerous creatures like stone monkeys or wild boars had appeared. Looking at the strange deer again, he muttered that he had never seen anything called a valley deer in Asura. But from that moment, he had a bad feeling. He admitted to himself that he had sensed it already. He believed this place was closely connected to survival and danger. Still, he told himself it was not certain yet. Even so, he forced himself to ignore that thought. He knew nothing here was clear or guaranteed. He tightened his grip on his weapon and stepped forward. Deep down, he realized the reason he kept denying it was simple. He did not want to accept that a disaster might be coming to humanity. But that small hope did not last long. Soon he found what he was looking for. A strange tree stood ahead, glowing softly in the forest. A blue system window appeared, showing the name Sun Apple. He stopped and stared at it in silence. Reaching out carefully, he picked up the shining fruit. Holding it in his hand, he swallowed nervously. With an uneasy expression, he muttered that it should be fine. He took a bite of the glowing apple. The taste was strange, but warm energy spread through his body. A blue system window appeared, saying that his stamina had been slightly restored by the sun apple. His eyes widened in shock. He felt the change clearly and muttered in disbelief. He realized the effect was exactly the same as the sun apple juice sold in the game's cash shop. He let out a dry laugh and cursed under his breath. This was enough to confirm it. As if that was not bad enough, he noticed something else nearby, goblin droppings. Seeing that, his expression turned serious, knowing things were about to get worse. He let out a long breath, trying to calm himself. Holding his head, he told himself that it was time to stop denying it and accept the truth. His chest rose and fell as he steadied his breathing. Slowly, he lifted his head. His eyes hardened, filled with grim certainty. In a low, serious voice, he accepted the conclusion that the end was coming. After turning that strange sense of déjà vu into certainty, he immediately left the portal and started preparing. The first thing he did was take out an old hard drive he had kept and review the early gameplay footage. He remembered that he had only streamed and recorded it because he liked the game. He could not believe it was being used like this now. After searching through the drive, he finally found useful information about an alien asteroid called Yunjumbi that fell near Okinawa on July 20th. In an instant, Okinawa was destroyed. People infected by zombie spores slowly turned into zombies. 5 hours later, their bodies began to decay as the Iron Death disease progressed. He looked at the time and date. After calculating it, he realized there were only 32 days left until the apocalypse. Looking at it again, he thought about survival life. He remembered how the game was full of unfriendly and annoying mechanics, and the worst part of all was the Iron Death disease. It was a strange phenomenon that caused all metal to slowly crumble and break apart. Guns, cars, buildings and machines all became useless. 5 hours after zombie spores spread through an area, the Iron Death disease followed like an aftershock. It swept through cities and towns, destroying everything made of metal. In an instant, human civilization was pushed back to the Stone Age. Later on, the Iron Death disease would slowly fade away, but that depended on the region. The real problem was the time it took. It took anywhere from 6 months to a full year for the disease to fully subside. However, that terrifying Iron Death disease no longer mattered to him. The trait he had obtained was Private Portal. It was only a guess, but he believed the Iron Death disease would not be able to pass through the portal. After finishing his initial analysis, he used all the money he had saved. He bought every kind of survival supply he could find: weapons, food, tools, medicine and equipment needed to live on his own. After that, he checked the awakened community while thinking about what to do next. Many people were chatting casually, some mocked the warnings and asked for proof. Others told everyone to stop talking nonsense. Someone even bragged about using their trait to steal money. Looking at their messages, he frowned. He muttered that they were far too carefree. As soon as morning came, he went out and bought more supplies. On the way back home, he also bought a 60-pound hunting bow through a private sale. As he walked away with the case in hand, a thought suddenly crossed his mind. He wondered if he was overreacting all by himself. Looking up at the sky, he told himself that if nothing happened, then it was fine. At worst, he would just struggle for 2 or 3 years. After finishing his morning errands, he returned home. Then he put up a temporarily closed sign on his shop so he would not waste any time. He let out a tired sigh, his head feeling heavy. He muttered to himself, confused about why so many things were suddenly happening overnight. Just then, someone called out to him. A young woman stood in front of him and asked if he was closing down the shop. He scratched his head and smiled awkwardly. He explained that he was not closing it, but that the shop was old and needed some remodeling. Hearing that, she smiled brightly and said that he must have made a lot of money. He quickly waved it off and said it was not that much, repeating that the shop was just old. After that, he tried to end the conversation. He said he had something to take care of and asked to be excused. The woman suddenly spoke again, calling out to him as if she wanted to ask something, but then she stopped herself. She smiled and said it was nothing, telling him she would see him later. She turned around and walked away. He stood there watching her leave, feeling puzzled. He quietly wondered what she had been trying to say. He asked calmly why they wanted to know. He realized it was a situation where he could have easily asked questions, but he chose to stay silent. From now on, there were things he needed to do seriously. Standing in his room, he reached out his hand and opened the portal. He knew his gameplay style very well. He was a planner, someone who created detailed strategies to overcome challenges. Because of that, compared to veteran players, he lacked physical skill. But even so, he understood one thing clearly. With proper planning, he could still survive what was coming. In Sura, stats were not gained by leveling up. They were earned through the results of hunting and exploration. Standing in front of the target, he let out a slow breath. He wondered if this would work. He pulled the bowstring. Suddenly he froze. Something felt different. He smiled slightly and said that drawing the bow was easier than he thought. Sweat ran down his face as he pulled the string again. Thinking that if he could just aim properly, this might really be possible, he raised the bow high, pulled the string to its limit and steadied his aim. Then he released. The arrow flew out in a wide arc. A loud impact echoed as it struck the target. He stared at his hand in disbelief and muttered that it felt unreal. He joked to himself, wondering if he had been Legolas in a past life. Looking at his fingers, he quietly admired the talent he was seeing. After calming down, he thought seriously about his limits. He realized he could only draw the bow properly about 5 times at most, but it was still not bad. He decided that starting today he would focus hard on strength training. After finishing these basic preparations, he moved on to the next step. Standing in the forest with the bow in hand, he thought carefully. From now on, there were two things he needed to take care of. The first was to figure out whether he could hunt monsters in his current condition. The second thing he needed to do was build a hideout in this place where he could store his supplies. He reminded himself that until the weapons and supplies he ordered arrived, he would not do anything reckless. He would not try something stupid, like taking over a nest. As he moved through the forest, his eyes landed on glowing fruits hanging from the branches. He reached out and grabbed them, unable to hide his excitement. He laughed and said his luck was insane. After that, he continued preparing for every possible situation and for the future ahead. That was the reason he was able to remain a veteran in Asura. He carefully looked around the area, certain that he had seen it nearby. After searching for a moment, his eyes widened. He had found it. On the ground in front of him were goblin droppings. He focused on them because there was a simple reason for it. Goblins were monsters that usually lived in groups. Because of that, seeing only a single pile of droppings lying around was strange and abnormal. He looked closely at the droppings and noticed that they were made up of only seeds. That meant the goblin had not been eating properly. Just as he had predicted, there was a high chance this goblin had been kicked out of its group. He decided that he had to find this goblin, no matter what it took. Opportunities like this were rare. It was not often that he got a chance to test himself in a real fight. The sky slowly grew darker as evening came. He noticed the light fading and felt uneasy. Still, hearing wolves howl in the distance told him something important. It meant he was getting closer to the valley. He moved carefully through the forest, staying alert. Suddenly, he froze. Not far ahead, something small and green was crouching near the water. He recognized it immediately. It was a goblin. As he watched closely, he realized it looked exactly like the goblins he had seen before in Asura. He recalled the basic information about goblins. They were low-tier monsters that usually use spears or poison darts. They liked to paralyze their enemies with poison and slowly torment them. That was exactly why he had chosen a bow as his first weapon. Hiding behind the trees, he carefully drew his bow and took a deep breath, forcing himself to stay calm. Looking closer, he realized this goblin was different. It was old, and it seemed to have been exiled from its group. More importantly, it was not carrying a poison dart or a spear. He steadied his breathing and reminded himself not to get nervous. As long as he stayed calm, he believed he could hunt it. He released the arrow. The arrow shot straight down and pierced through the goblin's arm. The goblin screamed in pain and thrashed violently. He frowned slightly. He had aimed for the head, but at least the attack had hit. Seeing the opening, he decided not to hesitate. He planned to press the advantage and go for another shot. However, when he moved forward to take another shot, something went wrong. The goblin suddenly threw a stone. It flew straight at him and smashed into his hand. He gritted his teeth and cursed under his breath as pain shot through his arm. The goblin did not retreat. Even with its arm injured, it rushed at him fiercely. Seeing its movements, he realized this goblin was experienced. It was not panicking like a normal weak monster. He quickly dropped the bow and pulled out his blade. The goblin roared and swung its weapon at him. Their attacks collided head-on. The blade and the crude weapon clashed with a loud impact. Both sides pushed forward, neither willing to back down. Shongho lunged forward without hesitation, gripping the blade tightly. His eyes were sharp and focused as he swung at the goblin. The goblin twisted its body and barely avoided a fatal hit, but it was still forced back. Songho shouted as he pushed forward, forcing him to the ground. They crashed down together, locked in a brutal struggle. The goblin screamed loudly, raising its head to bite. At the last moment, he grabbed his weapon again and drove it straight down. The blade pierced deep into the goblin's body. The goblin let out a final shrill scream as its strength faded. Songho collapsed to the ground, breathing heavily. A blue message appeared, telling him that he had gained 2 points. He stared at it for a moment, then laughed weakly. He said he had really done it. After calming down, his eyes fell on a small pouch lying nearby. He picked it up and checked the contents. Inside were guaca powder and vegetable oil. He remembered that in Sura, combining these two could make a simple ointment. He decided to try it later. There was no time to relax. He knew he had to hurry and dig. If the goblins group found the body, it would be dangerous. He hurried away, knowing he could not leave the body behind. If he did, it would clearly turn into a bone creeper. As he moved through the forest, his eyes caught something unusual. He stopped and looked toward the stream. 2 red trout were swimming calmly in the clear water. He frowned slightly, surprised to see them there. A thought crossed his mind. If this was a valley where red trout lived, then this place might be more special than he first thought. Suddenly he felt a chill run down his spine. He slowly turned his head, his face stiff with fear. A bad feeling filled his chest, and his breath grew shallow. Behind him stood a massive monster. Its red eyes glowed in the darkness as it stared straight at him. It was an owlbear. Kneeling on the ground, Song-ho swallowed hard and realized the truth. He realized he was completely screwed. His life started flashing before his eyes. He started remembering the days when he used to play the game and livestream. He often used to cover monsters' habits, fighting styles, and behavior, and one of them was owlbears. He remembered explaining that the most dangerous creatures in the forest were werewolves and owlbears. He had pointed out that when an owlbear had already claimed a territory, it meant something important. It meant the monster ecosystem in that area was balanced. Looking back, he felt that those days were truly good times. The chat, which always reacted with excitement, made him laugh. Those familiar comments filled the chat, making the stream feel lively and warm. But suddenly, his thoughts broke apart. He wondered why he was thinking about those happy memories now. His face turned pale, and sweat rolled down his cheek. A strange fear filled his chest. He realized what was happening. It felt like his life was flashing before his eyes. In front of him, the owlbear stood tall. Its red eyes glowed as it slowly raised its sharp claws. Song-ho shook his head and rejected the thought. At least for him, this was not his life flashing before his eyes. It felt more like a flashback of his old friends telling him to calm down and get a grip. His body trembled, but he forced himself to think clearly. He recalled what he knew. Owlbears had a habit of tearing apart anything they saw when they were hungry, but the fact that the owlbear was just standing there meant one thing: it was not hungry. In other words, there was only one thing that was bothering the owlbear. That meant he had entered the owlbear's territory, the place where the red trout lived. Understanding this, his mind became clear. If that was the case, then there was only one way to escape this situation. He knew that in his mind, he was still Kimbap Joa, but his body was Kang Song-ho. Even so, if he wanted to live, he had to do this. He clenched his teeth and shouted, pushing himself forward. The owlbear had the head of an owl, so its night vision was strong. However, it was weak to sunlight. The monster lunged at him, swinging its claws down. But he did not panic. He had memorized its attack patterns long ago. Now, all he had to do was execute them. The owlbear's claw swung down at him. He watched it closely and knew there was only one timing. The attack passed just past his face, missing him by a hair. That moment was all he needed. He moved instantly and rushed forward. He raised the flashlight in his hand and aimed it straight ahead. He turned it on and shone the light directly into the owlbear's eyes. A sharp beam of light burst out. The owlbear screamed in pain and roared loudly. Its eyes were blinded by the sudden light. After that, the scene shifted to the next day in his room. A sharp ringing sound filled the room. The alarm kept ringing again and again. He slowly opened his eyes and groaned. His whole body ached badly. The ringing continued, making his head throb. He reached out and slapped the alarm clock, finally turning it off. He stared at the time and felt confused. He wondered if he had passed out the moment he escaped. It felt like hours had gone by, and he thought that made sense. Lying there, he let out a tired sigh. As if fighting a goblin was not enough, he had even run into an owlbear. The memory made him shudder. He muttered that he really never wanted to see one again. Just then, his stomach suddenly growled. He realized that he had not eaten anything since yesterday afternoon. Trying to get up, he lost his balance and fell forward, hitting the floor hard. He groaned in pain and lay there for a moment. His legs felt weak, with no strength left in them. Turning his head, he noticed his backpack nearby. He reached out and opened it, then pulled out a yellow apple. Without hesitation, he took a bite. Warm energy spread through his body as he chewed. A soft glow wrapped around him, and his strength slowly returned. He lay back on the bed, breathing out in relief. Feeling the warmth fill him, he thought that he finally felt a bit more alive. After recovering his strength, he smiled to himself and thought that it was time to properly fill his stomach. So he went outside to a restaurant. As he was about to eat, he noticed someone familiar sitting across from him. Seeing her there made him confused. He wondered why Mi-kyung was here. She smiled brightly and explained that she had come to eat. She added that this place was one of her favorite restaurants. Kang Song-ho tried to explain that he meant something else and asked why she was sitting with him. Before he could finish, Mi-kyung cheerfully said that it was nice to have someone to eat with. Hearing that, he could only sit there quietly, unsure how to react. While eating, Mi-kyung casually asked Song-ho if he had ever tried the thing she mentioned before. Song-ho paused and asked if she meant the status window. Her eyes lit up right away, and she excitedly asked if he had tried it. At that moment, Song-ho finally understood why she had stopped herself from talking back then. Mi-kyung leaned forward and said with confidence that she really thought it was real. She even showed him an article on her phone about a strange incident at a convenience store. As Song-ho listened, he quietly thought that he could not tell whether she was just naive or simply too pure. With a helpless smile, he pointed out that what she wanted to ask was already very obvious. He then answered honestly, saying that he did try it, but unfortunately nothing appeared for him. Although he knew it was a lie, he felt that lying in this situation was completely justified. His trait was not combat-oriented at all. It was a skill meant for solo play, not for working in a team. In a world where his safety was not even guaranteed, revealing his abilities would be extremely dangerous. With a calm expression, he tapped the table lightly as these thoughts passed through his mind. In his eyes, showing his hand was no different from openly telling others to come and kill him in the apocalypse. He noticed that even after everything, Mi-kyung was still asking about awakening. That meant she was one of the awakened. Suddenly, Mi-kyung apologized to Kang Sung-ho. Looking confused, Kang Sung-ho asked what she was apologizing for. She hesitated, then admitted that there was something she had lied about. As he watched her, he quietly thought that Mi-kyung really seemed like a good person. Kang Sung-ho looked at her seriously and told her that it was okay. He said she did not have to tell him right now. They still had time. She could tell him later, when she felt brave enough. With those words, he headed back home. When he arrived, packages were being delivered in front of his house. The things he had ordered were finally starting to arrive, one by one. After that, he moved the items he would need later up to the rooftop. The things he needed right away were taken to the second floor. While he was at it, he began preparing seriously. He carefully cut open the boxes and selected the items he would use for today's operation. After laying everything out, his goal for the day became clear. His mission today was to find a place that could be used as a hideout. He gripped the pipe tightly in his hands. No matter what happened, he knew he had to secure a hideout. With his backpack on and tools ready, he moved forward without hesitation. Finding a place to hide was not difficult for him. Earlier, while searching for the old goblin, he had already noticed a strange and suspicious spot. That place now became his target. He looked at the hidden cave covered by plants and vines. To him, it looked absolutely perfect for a hideout. However, he knew the most important thing was to find out what kind of monster lived there. He raised the portable telescope and carefully checked the ground inside. Soon, his eyes caught something. He saw footprints clearly pressed into the dirt. They looked familiar. He realized they were kobold footprints. At that moment, he felt a wave of relief. This was pure luck. He lowered the telescope and smiled sincerely. Even though his plan would work on most low-tier monsters, it was still better to confirm everything. He plucked a small leaf and let it fall to check the wind. After watching its movement, he nodded to himself. The kobolds that lived there were nocturnal, so they would be asleep at this time. For them, what he was about to do would be absolute poison. To carry out his plan, he quickly began gathering firewood. It was tougher than he expected, but he did not stop. After collecting enough, he placed the firewood near the cave entrance. Looking at the pile, he felt it should be enough. Then without hesitation, he poured gasoline over the firewood. He crouched down and thought that now all he had to do was set it on fire. At that moment, a voice suddenly rang out. Kobolds rushed out from the cave. They had already woken up. When they saw Song-ho, the kobolds looked shocked to see him standing there. Before they could react properly, he moved. He grabbed the fire axe and charged forward without hesitation. The axe swung through the air in a wide arc and killed the kobolds swiftly. As he looked at the fallen creatures, a thought crossed his mind. Was drowsiness actually a status effect? It seemed like the kobolds had been sluggish from sleep, allowing him to land perfect blows. He was surprised that even now a one-turn kill was possible. Just then, a blue system window appeared in front of him, telling him that his level had risen to 1 and that he had acquired a total of 4 points. He took a quick breath and glanced at the message. There was no time to celebrate. He decided to think about the details later. For now, he needed to act fast before more kobolds woke up. He pulled out his lighter and dropped it onto the gasoline-soaked firewood. Flames burst to life, spreading quickly. Inside the cave, the fire crackled and smoke began to rise. In the game Asura, all low-tier monsters had one thing in common. They were extremely weak against sudden changes. Although burning them alive would have been more effective, as the new owner of this place, that would make cleaning up later very troublesome. Because of that, he chose a different method. He decided to weaken them first. The smoke made their eyes sting and their heads dizzy, making it easier for him to kill the monsters. Inside the cave, the kobolds shouted loudly and screamed. They stumbled around, coughing and roaring in confusion. This was exactly what Kang Song-ho wanted. By throwing them into chaos, he could control the fight. Soon, kobolds rushed outside one after another, coughing and stumbling. This was exactly what Kang Song-ho had been waiting for. When they came out, his plan was to finish them all at once. He watched carefully and frowned slightly. He had expected at least 5 to appear, since a kobold pack usually had 7, but fewer came out than he thought. As he counted quickly, he realized how many were left. Only 3 remained. Without hesitation, he moved. One kobold was struck down instantly, green blood splashing across the ground. The remaining kobolds roared angrily and charged at him through the smoke. Their eyes were wild, their movements clumsy, but their killing intent was clear. Kang Song-ho raised the axe high and brought it down with full force. The blade cut through the air and slammed into a kobold, green blood splashing out. Before he could pull the axe back, another kobold rushed at him from the side, screaming loudly. He dropped low and rolled forward, narrowly avoiding its claws. The kobolds surrounded him, attacking together. In one swift motion, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a spray can. He aimed it straight at the charging kobold's face and pressed down hard. A powerful jet burst out and hit the kobold directly in the eyes. The creature screamed in pain and staggered back, blinded and confused. Kang Song-ho used that opening to regain his footing. Before it could finish shouting, the axe came down. The blade split through its body, and green blood sprayed into the air. Kang Song-ho tightened his grip on the pipe and looked ahead. Only one kobold was left. He spoke calmly, saying that now it was the last one standing. The remaining kobold trembled. Its body shook as it stepped back, fear clear in its eyes. He watched it closely and coldly thought that the leader was trembling in fear. He raised his weapon and ended it with a single strike. As the final blow landed, he looked at the cave and decided that the hideout now belonged to him. He sat down on the ground and let out a long breath. The fight was finally over, but his body felt extremely heavy. Dealing with them was not that hard, but because he had no stamina, it was truly exhausting. As he rested, he realized that it was just like the game. The exhaustion debuff was clearly active. A blue status window appeared in front of him. It showed that he was now level 1, but his health, strength, agility, dexterity, and perception were all lowered. The listed effect was exhaustion. Looking at it, he thought about how strange it was. Even after leveling up, he did not gain any status points. Still, he knew that leveling up unlocked convenience systems. Because of that, today's reward was still important. As he looked at the newly unlocked menus floating before him, he quietly accepted the result. More than anything else, he now had a secure place, a space that only he could use. Looking up, he smiled faintly, satisfied with the result. After that, he stood up and turned toward the cave to look at his new hideout. However, the inside was messy, filled with broken wood and scattered debris. He let out a tired breath and stood there for a moment. Then he accepted reality. Before resting, he would have to clean the nest first. After obtaining a hideout, Kang Song-ho immediately started cleaning it. The place was deep underground, about 15 meters down. For a hermitage, it was on the small side. Maybe because it was right after a big fight, the condition inside was especially bad. While cleaning, he felt disgusted and complained that it was filthy. Even so, he kept working. It was the hardest work he had ever done. As he cleaned up the mess left behind, he got angry and cursed the kobolds for not cleaning after themselves. Still, now that he had a safe space in the other world, things were different. He opened the dimensional gate and began using its abilities freely. By moving items through the gate, the cleaning became a little easier. However, he was so tired that he felt like he might pass out at any moment. Even while working, he sighed to himself and thought about how hard his life had become. Still, he continued cleaning without stopping. While traveling between dimensions, he discovered something surprising. He learned that he could fix the coordinates of both the other world and reality. Because of that, objects could interact with each other even when they were between both worlds. When he tried it, water actually flowed through the dimensional gate. Seeing this, he was shocked and excited that it really worked. After finishing the cleaning, he stood there and looked around. The hideout looked much better than before. Although he needed to remove the bloodstains everywhere and pour concrete on the ground so he could store things properly. However, Kang Sung-ho knew the mortar work would take a few days. After that, he still had to install the sandwich panels as well. While thinking about it, he suddenly paused in confusion. That was when he noticed the stones embedded in the cave walls. They were luminous stones and ignition stones. One gave off light, while the other could create fire. Seeing them, he was amazed. These were essential items for beginners in Sayora. Holding the stones in his hands, he realized this place was a complete gold mine. With a smile on his face, he decided that once the construction preparations were finished, he would start mining right away. The next day arrived. Outside the snack bar, he let out a long groan. Inside, he bent forward, breathing heavily. Yesterday, he had pushed himself too hard. Because of that, his whole body ached, and there was not a single place that did not hurt. When he raised his arm, he froze. He noticed many small cuts on his skin and wondered when he had gotten all of them. Still, it was not serious enough to need a sun apple right away. He decided to test something else first. He thought about making an ointment to see if it would work. Holding the ingredients in his hands, he realized the method for making the ointment was actually very simple. He mixed guaca powder and vegetable oil together in a 5:5 ratio. He poured them into a bowl and kept stirring until the mixture slowly hardened. As he worked, a small smile appeared on his face. The result was a fairly useful ointment that could slightly heal wounds. For someone who worked in a kitchen before, making this was easy. He tested it by spreading the ointment on his arm. After a moment, he could clearly feel the healing effect. It was working. However, as Kang Sung-ho looked at it closely, he frowned. Using something like this every time felt a bit troublesome. To raise his stats, he knew he had to keep doing what he was doing now. Still, as memories of dangerous fights flashed through his mind, he quietly worried that if things continued like this, he might die before the disaster even arrived. He sat quietly and thought things through. A sling was smaller than a bow and depended heavily on the terrain. Even a gun could only take down 1 or 2 enemies at the very beginning. None of those options felt reliable enough. Something suddenly came to mind. He remembered that what he knew about Sayora so far was not even the main story. It was only a background story. But would that background story really happen in reality? He stepped into the room and looked around. After thinking for a moment, he decided that the information was not completely useless. If the same preliminary events from the background story really did occur, it would benefit him in many ways, so it was worth checking out. After making a plan, Kang Sung-ho went up to the rooftop as scheduled to prepare for the construction work. Fortunately, the bags of mortar he had ordered the night before were already piled up properly. Because of that, the work went smoothly. After that, he went down to the first floor to pick up the items he had ordered. He was just about to move the pile of packages when someone suddenly called out to him. Mi-kyung greeted him cheerfully in the afternoon. Hearing her voice, Kang Sung-ho paused and turned his head, wondering if she had come closer or if her address had changed. Mi-kyung looked at Kang Sung-ho and said that she had been seeing him a lot lately. Kang Sung-ho was holding a box and looked at her in confusion. He let out a small sound, not understanding at first. Mi-kyung explained that she had been coming to eat tteokbokki every day, which was why she kept running into him. Hearing that, Kang Sung-ho laughed awkwardly and apologized. He said he had been very busy lately because of the store remodeling. Mi-kyung looked at him carefully and commented that he really did look busy. Kang Sung-ho paused for a moment, unsure what she meant. When he asked, she smiled and reminded him that he used to come in for a haircut once every 3 months. Realizing she was right, Kang Sung-ho nodded and said that was true. Mi-kyung brightened up and suggested that since they were talking about it, he could get a haircut now. Kang Sung-ho thought about it and decided it was not a bad idea. He needed a haircut for the upcoming exploration anyway. With a relaxed smile, he agreed and said they should do that. After that, both of them went to Mi-kyung's hair salon. Standing behind him, Mi-kyung asked Kang Sung-ho how he wanted his haircut. Sitting in the chair with long hair covering his shoulders, he answered calmly that he wanted everything chopped off. She was startled and asked why. He explained that he wanted to shave it all off to mark a new beginning. Hearing that, Mi-kyung understood and smiled. She said that if that was the case, she would cut it as nicely as she could. She picked up the spray bottle and scissors and began working. While cutting his hair, she suddenly mentioned that his shoulders seemed to have gotten broader. Kang Sung-ho sounded a little surprised and said that he had started working out recently, so it must be showing. She nodded and then added that she had heard something interesting. She said it seemed the status window was related to something called survival life. Hearing that, Kang Sung-ho quietly responded, clearly paying close attention to what she had just said. She continued cutting and said that awakeners were said to be people who had played that game at least once. Hearing that, Kang Song-ho looked shocked and asked if it was really true. He then asked her where she had gotten that information. Mi-kyung hesitated for a moment, looking a little flustered, and started to explain. At that moment someone suddenly appeared. A blonde man walked in and asked why she was surprised to see him at that hour. He said he came because he had some information to share. Seeing this blonde-haired man, Kang Song-ho remembered that this was the man he had once fought with over loud singing. The man continued speaking and explained that someone seemed to be trying to monopolize information. Because of that, the person had deleted all his videos and run away. Hearing this, Mi-kyung reacted in shock and asked if that was really true. The blonde-haired man told Mi-kyung that their group was currently trying to find out where that person lived. Mi-kyung looked uneasy and asked if that was not illegal. The blonde man spoke honestly and called her name. He asked if they were really in a position to be picky right now. He said that catching the person who was hiding information and then sharing it was for the public good. She still hesitated and said it did not feel right. From the chair, Kang Song-ho felt a bad feeling rise in his chest. He realized they were talking about him and that they were looking for him. The blonde man told Mi-kyung that she needed to be bold. He then asked if she had finished thinking about joining their team. Mi-kyung hesitated and told him that she had not decided yet. Meanwhile, sitting quietly, Kang Song-ho thought that the whole situation felt ridiculous. In his mind, he recalled deleting the video only because he felt disappointed at the time. He never even thought about monopolizing information. He did not even have time to think about something like that. The blonde man clicked his tongue in annoyance and said she was frustrating. He wrapped an arm around her shoulders and confidently said everything was progressing exactly like Sayora. Watching this, Kang Song-ho felt disgusted by the way the man acted as if he knew everything. The blonde man sneered and said that if that guy had just posted the information in the first place, none of this would be happening. He warned Mi-kyung that he could not wait much longer. Hearing this, Kang Song-ho wondered what would happen if the community really turned against him and cursed him. If that happened, he did not know what to do. A question echoed in his thoughts. He wondered if he should be the one to share the information instead. The blonde man urged her to make a decision quickly. At that moment, Kang Song-ho finally stepped forward. He calmly said that he did not know what they were talking about and asked if they could discuss it later. The blonde man's eyes widened in shock. He turned sharply and started to speak, asking who that person thought he was talking to. Kang Song-ho stepped closer, his eyes cold. He warned the blonde man to leave while he was still being polite. He added that this was a chance to walk away before things turned ugly again. The blonde man froze. Sweat formed on his face as fear crept into his eyes. He let out a nervous sound and realized that today was not his day. He muttered that he would leave and turned toward the door. As he walked out, he forced a stiff goodbye. Once he was gone, Mi-kyung finally relaxed and let out a long breath. Her shoulders dropped as the tension faded. After a moment, Kang Song-ho spoke again. He gently called her name and suggested that they exchange phone numbers, just in case. He smiled lightly and told her that the blonde man was a bad person. After that, he came back home. He put the construction work aside for a while and turned on his computer. Under the excuse of information monopoly, the online community had exploded. The real-time boards were filled with angry messages. People were shocked that all the videos had been deleted and cursed the person who posted them. Some threatened to kill him if they found out where he lived. Others asked hackers to expose him and even offered rewards. The screen was flooded with insults and abuse aimed at him. The person who had shared the important early information was now receiving nothing but hate. He scrolled further and saw one of his old posts. It was a guide titled Early Game Honey Tips. The post explained zombie behavior, weak points, and safe floors in buildings. Even under that post, people were still attacking him. They mocked him, doubted him, and demanded proof of his playtime. Finally, he noticed an ID that seemed to belong to the same group of people. He clicked on it and saw the name displayed on the screen. He frowned and muttered that the person was crazy, wondering why someone would even verify their real name just to make a nickname. The posts became even worse. They were no longer just cursing him. Some comments talked about finding him, while others mentioned doing something to Jung Mi-kyung. Reading that, his expression darkened. He called them filthy in his mind. Unable to stand it anymore, he turned off the computer. A deep sense of disgust toward people settled in his chest. Still, he knew it was not because he was broken mentally. He was simply tired of people like them. But then something changed. As he sat there, his hand rested on the chair, and he suddenly felt strange. It was as if his mind was becoming clear. He wondered why his head felt lighter and calmer than before. At that moment, a thought surfaced in his mind. He reached out and opened the dimensional gate. For the next 2 days he fully focused on working on the hideout. He mined luminous stones and ignition stones with a pickaxe. After that, he mixed mortar with water and poured it onto the ground. He spread it carefully and smoothed it out evenly with a tool, making sure there were no rough spots left. Once the work was done, he stepped outside. He came out to wait for the mortar to dry, letting the quiet air surround him as he took a short break. As he looked at the moon blooming in the dark sky, a thought came to him. His hand slowly clenched into a fist. He thought that when faced with injustice, it was fine to answer it with injustice. He knew he was not a hero, he was just an ordinary person, so he did not need any grand sense of mission. In the end, he understood one simple thing: he only needed to survive. When he made that decision and turned around to go back, something happened. A sharp cracking sound came from behind him. He slowly looked back, his eyes narrowing. At that moment the bone creeper appeared. The skeleton stepped out of the dark, its red eyes glowing as its bones made loud cracking sounds while it moved closer. Seeing it, he cursed under his breath. A sudden blast of force swept through the area. Kang Song-ho was thrown back and crashed onto the ground. His body rolled across the dirt as dust and small stones scattered. He coughed hard and tried to push himself up, his face full of pain and shock. He shouted in confusion, not understanding what had just happened. The wind slowly faded. He knelt on the ground, holding his head as his ears rang. When the dust settled, broken bones lay on the ground in front of him. Kang Song-ho looked down at his shaking hand and felt confused. He could not understand how he was still alive. When he remembered what had happened, he saw the bone creeper in his mind. By the time he noticed it, the creature was already about to explode. He had no time to think. He had turned and run with everything he had. A huge blast went off behind him. The shockwave threw him into the air and sent him flying far away. He crashed hard onto the ground, barely surviving. Now sitting there in pain, he understood the truth. Kang Song-ho raised his hand and opened the status window. It showed that his health was very low and all his stats had dropped. But there were no torn muscles or broken organs. When he saw that his level and points had gone up, he understood what it meant. The system had counted the bone creeper as defeated. His head started to hurt badly. He grabbed it, feeling dizzy and confused. He quickly opened the dimensional gate and went back to his house. After coming back, he started treating his wounds right away. He placed his medical supplies on the table and sat down in front of them. One by one, he carefully pulled the sharp bone pieces out of his skin. His teeth clenched as pain spread through his body. After that, he rubbed healing ointment over the wounds to stop the bleeding. It burned badly, and he let out a painful breath. When the bleeding slowed, he wrapped his arm and body with a bandage and checked his condition. His vision became blurry, and his strength slowly faded. In the end, Kang Song-ho collapsed onto the couch and fell asleep from exhaustion. The next day, morning light filled the room as Kang Song-ho lay on the couch, still wrapped in bandages. He slowly opened his eyes and felt weak all over. For a moment he thought he was really going to die like this. Sitting up, he realized he should have checked whether the ointment worked before falling asleep. So he quickly opened his status window. His status window showed that his health had gone up and his body was stable. Seeing that, he finally felt relieved. Kang Song-ho let out a slow breath, knowing the medicine had worked. Then he started to think about what had happened last night. He wondered where the bone creeper had come from. However, he knew that the forest was huge, so it was not strange for dangerous things to suddenly appear. After this accident, Kang Song-ho realized that his perception stat was too low, so he needed to raise it to notice danger faster. He remembered how the game Sayora worked. There were two main ways to become stronger. The first way was to gain experience and earn stat points by fighting and leveling up. The second way was to get special items that had stats on them. But he also knew that Sayora was a very harsh game. Getting good items was very hard because everything was random. In his mind, he recalled how players fought monsters again and again, hoping to finally get something useful. He also remembered that strong monsters could have special skills, and if the right conditions were met, those skills could be obtained. Although he needed items with stats, he did not know where to get them right now. To find the answer, Kang Song-ho decided to check the game's background story that he remembered. He turned on his device and opened the game menu. The background story explained what happened before the silver rain fell. He remembered that if someone was lucky, it was possible to get special items before the apocalypse even began. But this would only happen if those early strange events occurred in the real world. During those events, strong monsters would start to appear. After carefully reading the background story for a long time, he learned that there were 3 early events before the real disaster. The last one was about a Russian ship. Before that, there was something called the Hobgoblin, but there was no clear information about it. Then he saw a report on the screen. It said that on June 26 at 5 p.m., an orc's body was found near Jungsanri campground on Jirisan Mountain. The news was quickly deleted by the government, so almost no one knew about it. Kang Sung-ho understood that the Jirisan orc incident was the very first event. He checked the time again and realized that if the orc was found on the afternoon of the 26th, it must have been alive earlier that day, so he decided that he had to leave on the night of the 25th to reach the place by morning. As he was about to prepare things for this, his phone suddenly started to ring. It was Mi-kyung. Kang Sung-ho looked at the screen and wondered why she was calling him at this hour. The scene then shifted to a cafe called Starbin, where Mi-kyung was already sitting, waiting for him. When she saw him, she looked worried and asked if he was okay. She said his face looked strange and that he was wearing long sleeves even though the weather was hot. Kang Sung-ho gave a small laugh and said that he just did not feel the heat much. Mi-kyung kept watching him closely. She wondered if something had happened before. She asked if it was because his haircut appointment had been delayed because of Oh In-hak last time. Kang Sung-ho quickly said that was not the reason. Hearing that, Mi-kyung felt relieved. She said she was honestly a little scared because of how he had looked earlier. Kang Sung-ho laughed softly and said that even though he joked, it was true that he really did not like that man. He explained that the man had once caused trouble with an illegally modified tow truck. He had even picked a fight with a weak old man, showing how bad his character was. Mi-kyung was shocked and said she had no idea he was that kind of person. Kang Sung-ho told her it made sense that she did not know, because that man always caused problems late at night or early in the morning. Then Kang Sung-ho asked her why she had called him to meet today. Mi-kyung hesitated and nervously said she wanted to talk to him about something. She leaned closer and whispered to him that she was an awakener. Hearing that, Kang Sung-ho was stunned and wondered why she was telling him something like that. Kang Sung-ho decided to just go along with what Mi-kyung said for now. He smiled and joked that he was jealous because he had not awakened yet. Mi-kyung quickly apologized and said she felt bad for lying to him. Kang Sung-ho told her it was fine and that he did not misunderstand her. He said he knew she was not that kind of person. Then he thanked her for always sharing information and talking to him. He leaned forward and said that because of her he felt a little better. He also admitted that he had been stressed because of the house remodeling, but he was glad he had come to meet her. Before leaving, he told her that he would see her again in survival life. He said he was thinking about studying the game more seriously now. After that, he came back home. Sitting on his bed, he thought to himself that he really needed to meet more good people. Feeling much better, he sat there and looked at his phone, wondering what to do next. He rented a high-tech drone to scout the forest. He also rented a car to use for the remaining time. After that, he decided to sleep so his body could recover and reach its best condition. The next day, as soon as the sun rose, Kang Sung-ho started preparing materials for the orc hunt. Inside the cave, he sat at a work table and began crushing the ignition stones. It was dangerous work, so he had to be very careful while doing it. He knew that if he struck it the wrong way, a flame could burst out. As he hit it, sparks flew, and a small fire suddenly appeared. He was surprised, but he kept working. Next, he picked up the luminous stones. They glowed brightly in his hand, and the light kept flashing, making his eyes hurt. Even though it was uncomfortable, he endured it because the results were good. After finishing the basic preparation for the orc hunt, several jars and materials were placed on the table. There were different colored powders and bottles arranged neatly. He began pouring different liquids and powders into containers, mixing them together. Then he added another liquid that made everything become solid. The materials slowly came together, forming what he needed for the hunt. After that, a desk was set up where the dimensional gate's coordinates had been fixed. Then he stepped back into the real world. He prepared all the supplies and placed them inside the car. Standing there, he raised his hand and looked around in surprise. He softly reacted as he took a look at all the supplies. He smiled and felt satisfied. He was glad he had rented a good car. He felt that everything he needed was already prepared. Kang Sung-ho sat in the driver's seat and smiled. Now it was time to get going. He headed toward Jurisan.